Can you be rich and still stay within the grace of God, especially as we approach what the Bible describes as the end of times? Many people wrestle with this question, particularly those who find themselves blessed with wealth and success. Today, we're going to explore what it means to be rich in the eyes of God and how to stay in His grace, and what that means for your soul as the world moves closer to the biblical end times. Let's start with a common question. Is it wrong to be wealthy? The short answer is no. Wealth in itself is not condemned in the Bible, but the way you handle it and where your heart is matters deeply. The Bible teaches us that wealth can be a gift from God, but it's also a responsibility. Proverbs 10:12 tells us that the blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil for it. But it's not just about having money. It's about how you use it and what place it holds in your life. The Bible has many examples of godly men and women who were rich. Abraham, Job, and Solomon were all wealthy, yet they maintained a close relationship with God. However, these individuals understood that their wealth was not for self-indulgence, but for God's purposes. Their riches were a tool for blessing others, advancing God's kingdom, and fulfilling His plans. Being rich and staying in God's grace means shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing wealth as something you deserve or as a source of security, view it as a tool that God has entrusted to you. Wealth is not something to be worshipped, but something to be stewarded wisely. Let's take a deeper look at how we can manage wealth while remaining under God's grace. First and foremost, staying in the grace of God requires that you keep God above all else in your life, including your wealth. In Matthew 6:33, Jesus tells us to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. This means that our primary focus should always be God, His will, His ways, and our relationship with Him. Too often, wealth can become an idol, and we begin to trust in our bank accounts, investments, and success instead of relying on God. But the Bible is clear that we can't serve both God and money. Jesus says in Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and money." So, the first step to being rich and still in God's grace is to ensure that your wealth never takes priority over your relationship with Him. One of the most important ways to stay in God's grace while being rich is to be generous. The Bible places a heavy emphasis on generosity, especially towards those in need. In 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, Paul instructs the wealthy to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share. Why is generosity so important? Because it reflects God's own heart. When we give generously, we acknowledge that everything we have belongs to God. We break the grip that wealth can have on our hearts, and we use it to fulfill God's purposes. Remember, generosity doesn't mean just giving money. It also means giving your time, your energy, and your talents. Whether it's supporting your local church, donating to those in need, or investing in ministries that share the gospel, your wealth becomes a tool for God's kingdom. Jesus warns us in Luke 12:15 to be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Generosity is a powerful antidote to greed, and it allows us to use our wealth in ways that honor God and bring His love to the world. Another critical way to stay in God's grace as a wealthy person is through humility and gratitude. Wealth can make us feel self-sufficient, as though we are in control of our own destinies. But the Bible reminds us in Deuteronomy 8:18, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." Everything we have, our wealth, our success, our talents, comes from God. Practicing humility means recognizing that you are not the source of your success. God is. It means that being open to God's correction and direction, no matter how much wealth you have accumulated. Gratitude is the natural response to this humility. When we are truly thankful for what God has given us, we become better stewards of our wealth, always remembering that we are merely managers of His resources. Being rich in the grace of God requires that you also practice wise stewardship. In the parable of the talents found in Matthew 25:14 through 30, Jesus teaches that God expects us to manage what He has given us wisely. For the wealthy, this means not wasting resources or spending frivolously, but investing your wealth in ways that align with God's will. Wise stewardship goes beyond just financial management. It's about using your resources, money, time, and talents to further God's work. Ask yourself, how can my wealth serve God's kingdom? What opportunities has God given me to bless others and spread the gospel? When you approach your wealth as a tool for His glory, you stay within His grace. Now, let's bring this conversation to the context of the biblical end of times. The Bible tells us that as we near the end, there will be trials, tribulations, and spiritual battles. Wealth, if misused, can become a dangerous trap in these times. In Revelation 18, the fall of Babylon represents the collapse of a wealthy, materialistic society. Those who trusted in their riches are devastated, but their wealth cannot save them from God's judgment. In the end of times, the Bible warns that material wealth will not be enough to save anyone. Matthew 6:19-21 reminds us to store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. As we approach the end times, it's crucial to keep a heavenly perspective on wealth. Riches won't protect us from the trials ahead, but a heart grounded in faith will. Being rich in God's grace means that you use your wealth wisely, stay generous, and keep your heart focused on God, knowing that our true riches are stored up in eternity, not here on earth. The Bible makes it clear that we should always be prepared for Christ's return. Matthew 24:44 says, "So, you must always be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect Him." Whether we are wealthy or not, our priority must always be to live in a way that pleases God, using our resources for His purposes, and keeping our faith strong as we await His return. Staying in the grace of God as a wealthy person during the end times means that maintaining a humble heart, being generous, stewarding your resources wisely, and always keeping God as your first priority. Wealth can be a blessing, but it must never become your foundation. Only Christ can offer true security, both now and in the days to come. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like it, subscribe, and share it with others. Let's continue to seek God first and remain in His grace, no matter what the future holds. Stay blessed and stand firm in your faith.